Our world has been shrinking through increasing urbanization and globalization. Over half of all people now live in cities. Markets, businesses, regional and national economies have become part of an interconnected global network. Technological innovations such as the internet and air travel have increased cultural and social connectivity. The 2008 financial meltdown in American banks threatened economies and jobs around the world. Over 80% of all websites are in English, particularly American English. Approximately 83% of the film offerings in Latin America and 50% in Japan consist of Hollywood movies. Our popular television shows, such as Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, become models for other countries' television. The United States is historically referred to as the melting pot due to our country being built on the basis of immigration. Political violence and natural disasters send people far from their homelands to seek refuge. Tibetan Buddhists have established a new homeland in India. Lamas are being requested to give Dharma teachings in many countries. Violence in Iraq, Afghanistan, Sri Lanka, Sudan, and elsewhere are sending refugees to the United States, France, Canada, Italy, and the United Kingdom.
The 21st century, let's define what secularism is. Secularism is a secular spirit or tendency, especially a system of political or social philosophy that rejects all forms of religious faith and worship. Also, secularism is the view that public education and other matters of civil policy should be conducted without the introduction of a religious element. Until the Iranian Revolution in 1979, which brought Islam to the fore as a potent social force, there was a common assumption by Western intellectuals that Europe's past is the world's future. That is, just as many Europeans had lost interest in religion since the Enlightenment, the whole world will eventually secularize. This assumption that religion will become irrelevant in people's lives was shared by capitalism, communism, and liberalism. Charles Taylor, professor of philosophy at McGill University, describes three forms of Western secularism. The first stage is characterized by the withdrawal of the religious worldview from the public sphere. This is the result of much more than just the rise of scientific worldview. This is the disenchantment of the cosmos. Secularism is the move from the enchanted reality to the de-enchanted reality. This frees science to follow its own trajectory. In an enchanted worldview, science, politics, and religion all share the same worldview. When that enchanted worldview disappeared, science became free to follow its own rationale. The second stage is seen in the decline in personal religious practice and commitment. This is an individual's withdrawal from the community. People shift the sources of meaning away from external eternal sources to more personal choices. The third stage is the most recent development, which has caused a fragmentation of our ideas of social order. This is the shift in the culture away from assuming religious faith is the norm of how to live your life. Faith is now one option among many. This is society living in a universe which has no central point around which it revolves. In all senses, secularism is now under siege or waning. Many religions are undergoing a resurgence, either in their home regions or elsewhere, and political secularism is being threatened by politicized religious pressure groups.
Pluralism in religion is the awareness and present notion that in a diverse society, multiple religions can coexist. Its core four concepts are inclusivism, which means one's religion is not exclusively the only source of truth; tolerance, the coexistence and harmony with other religions; ecumenism, or some level of unity; and diversity, referring to the multiple religions within one society. Due to migration, missionary activities, and refugee movements, Religions have been destined to coexist. For example, Buddhism arose in India, but is presently popular in France, England, the United States, and is most pervasive in East Asia. The purpose of pluralism is not to engage in uniformity, but to combine differing beliefs for the common good.
This confrontational approach was reversed early in the Barack Obama presidency. In a historic speech to the Muslim world given in Cairo University in June 2009, President Obama spoke sympathetically about resolving political tensions between Islam and the West, as well as political tensions in areas such as West Asia between people of different religious traditions.
We meet at a time of great tension between the United States and Muslims around the world. Tension rooted in historical forces that go beyond any current More recently, tension has been fed by colonialism that denied rights and opportunities to many Muslims. And a Cold War in which Muslim-majority countries were too often treated as proxies without regard to their own aspirations. Moreover, the sweeping change brought by modernity and globalization led many Muslims to view the West as hostile to the traditions of Islam. Violent extremists have exploited these tensions in a small but potent minority of Muslims. The attacks of September 11, 2001, and the continued efforts of these extremists to engage in violence against civilians has led some in my country to view Islam as inevitably hostile not only to America and Western countries, but also to human rights. All this has bred more fear and more mistrust. I'm a Christian, but my father came from a Kenyan family that includes generations of Muslims. As a boy, I spent several years in Indonesia and heard the call of the azan at the break of dawn and at the fall of dusk. As a young man, I worked in Chicago communities where many found dignity and peace in their Muslim faith. As a student of history, I also know civilization's debt to Islam. It was Islam at places like Uluzar that carried the light of learning through so many centuries, paving the way for Europe's Renaissance and Enlightenment. And since our founding, American Muslims have enriched the United States. They have fought in our wars, they have served in our government, they have stood for civil rights, they have started businesses, they have taught at our universities, they've excelled in our sports arenas, they've won Nobel Prizes, built our tallest building, and lit the Olympic torch. And when the first Muslim American was recently elected to Congress, he took the oath to defend our Constitution using the same Holy Quran that one of our founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson, kept in his personal life. Just as Muslims do not fit a crude stereotype, America is not the crude stereotype of a self-interested empire. The United States has been one of the greatest sources of progress that the world has ever known. Founded upon the ideal that all are created equal by every culture, drawn from every end of the earth, and dedicated to a simple concept: e pluribus unum. Out of many, when violent extremists operate in one stretch of mountains, people are endangered across an ocean. When innocents in Bosnia and Darfur are slaughtered, that is a stain on our collective. That is what it means to share this world in the 21st century. That is the responsibility we have to one another as human beings. This is a difficult responsibility to embrace. For human history has often been a record of nations and tribes, and yes, religions, subjugating one another in pursuit of their own interests. Yet in this new age, such attitudes are self-defeating. Given our interdependence, any world order that elevates one nation or group of people over another will inevitably fail. All of us have a responsibility to work for the day when the mothers of Israelis and Palestinians can see their children grow up without fear. When the Holy Land of the three great faiths is the place of peace that God intended it to be. When Jerusalem is a secure and lasting home for Jews and Christians and Muslims, and a place for all of the children of Abraham to mingle peacefully together. As in the story of Isra, when Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad, peace be upon them, joined in prayer. There's one rule that lies at the heart of every religion: that we do unto others as we would have them do unto us. This truth transcends nations and peoples. A belief that isn't new, that isn't black or white or brown, that isn't Christian or Muslim or Jew. It's a belief that pulsed in the cradle of civilization and that still beats in the hearts of billions around the world. We have the power to make the world we see, but only if we have the courage to make a new beginning, keeping in mind what has been written. The Holy Quran tells us, "O mankind, we have created you, male and a female, and we have made you into nations and tribes, so that you may know one another." The Talmud tells us the whole of the Torah is for the purpose of promoting peace. The Holy Bible tells us, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God."
An existing movement has gained new strength in the world. It's called the interfaith movement. Now recently, there has been an increase in interfaith dialogue, which is the willingness of people of all religions to meet. Now, religions are quite different in their external practices and cultural influences, but it can be noticed that many religions share some of the same principles. There are several ways in which people of the different religions may relate to each other. According to Diana Eck, some of those ways are as being exclusivism, inclusivism, and pluralism, and later on, according to Arvind Sharma, universalism, which is religious tolerance.
The Voices of Religious Intolerance are growing louder every day. They seek to divide us from one another, Muslim from Jew, Christian from Buddhist, Hindu from secular humanist. Historically, voices of unity have risen above the chorus of bigotry. Voices like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Mahatma Gandhi. But today, intolerance is on the march again. We need new interfaith leaders to speak up against the divisions growing wider in America each day. Are you ready to stand up for what's right? Led by founder Eboo Patel, IFYC inspires young leaders of different faiths to work together to improve their communities and serve others. This movement is growing on college campuses nationwide, and IFYC's interfaith leaders are on the front lines. With your help, the forces of inclusion in America will prevail again. Speak up by joining the Interfaith Youth Corps at ifyc.org.
The Parliament of the World's Religion was first held in Chicago in 1893. This is an example of people of all faiths coming together to discover each other's religion. Another initiative is in 1986 when Pope John II invited 160 representatives of all religions to Assa in honor of humble Saint Francis to pray together for world peace. 2 years after that, the Assa idea was extended to government leaders, scientists, artists, and business leaders. About 200 people from around the world met in Oxford, England in 1988 at the Global Forum of Spiritual and Parliamentary Leaders on Human Survival. To convey unity, they held their sessions under a banner with the image of the Earth as seen from space. This global gathering model has been replicated in other locations with people from all around the world to deliberate on how religions can help solve the world's problems. Other ways that people have taken initiatives besides bringing many religions together is the use of internet, teachings in the classroom, and the building of multi-faith welcome center. The internet has many websites that are trying to overcome ignorance and intolerance. Websites such as www.religionstolerance.org have many resources aimed at educating the public. Multi-faith welcome centers provide services like counseling, healthcare, and informing different faiths about political matters.
Religion and social issues. For centuries, religions almost always have dealt with social issues and stigmas. Sexual activity outside of marriage and abortion have been ongoing issues for years. Some newly introduced issues would include the global reception, climate change, racism, terrorism, HIV/AIDS, and the gap between the rich and poor. With these newer issues looming into society, some religious groups are looking back into their teachings and scriptures to better handle them. Religions from Islam to Buddhism to Catholicism are all partaking in different approaches in effectively dealing with these types of issues. The gap between the rich and poor in particular is a tremendous social issue that affects many countries. More so than political affiliations, religious groups have put forth major efforts to stop this. The HIV/AIDS epidemic, which is also a huge social issue for religions all over the world, has made combative efforts as well. The notion that this disease comes from homosexuality and sexual promiscuity has allowed religions to delve into reproductive restrictions. Some examples of this would be the discouragement of sexual intercourse outside of marriage, and even within marriage, contraception may be subject to religious guidelines. The Roman Catholic Church tries to prohibit contraception and forbids sterilization and abortion. The historic document Gaudium et Spes stated that individual freedom should be consciously subsumed to concern for the common good and commitment of God. Other major social issues are abortion and in vitro fertilization. Arguments for these issues center around the notion that the fetuses involved are human beings with human rights. The newest issue dealing with reproduction that is presently gaining controversy in many religions is reproductive cloning research. Experiments on animals have produced live births, but eventually end up having harmful defects. Ethical and social questioning have arisen. Should clones be considered offspring or twins of its originator? Do clones have souls? Should human beings even be allowed to have access to this kind of technology? Terrorism has caused major concern as a social problem. Recent terrorist attacks, such as 9/11 in the United States in 2001, raise serious inquiry into motives and concerns of people who are willing to risk their lives and kill others.
Religion and public life. Even though religion carries some negative aspect in the eyes of some people and scholars, such as Sigmund Freud, Karl Marx, Nietzsche, etc., it does have some positive aspect for others. The French sociologist Émile Durkheim said that religion is a glue that holds a society together. He said that human beings cannot live without organized social structures. John Barker holds that religion has a biological purpose because it brings people together for the common survival. It gives the life a meaning. It protects them from gene replication. It helps them nurture their children. Former President Jimmy Carter said that faith is a gift from God. It is more precious than gold. He let us know that no greater life can be achieved without a central core of belief and standards. Without faith, we will cease to go like Jesus, strong in spirit, filled with wisdom and the grace of God upon him. After he left the White House, he went on to found Habitat for Humanity, which helped to build houses for the poor, and the Carter Center, which works on many fronts to help governments solve conflict through peace talk rather than violence.
Religion and materialism. All world religions share in common the beliefs that it is wrong to be selfish, hurt others, lie, steal, and be greedy. Instead, these religions teach their adherents to not be selfish, be considerate, and helpful to others. In the 20th century, modern capitalism began to take hold of societies. With this economic system came materialism. The system values earning a profit over maintaining spiritual ideals, as people and businesses are driven by the selfish gain of making a profit, often stepping over the interests of others to get there. William Byron, a professor of corporate responsibility at Loyola College, notes that integrity has fallen by the wayside in the new corporate culture. He further notes that the world of business instead revolves around secrecy, easy money, and the violation of trust. One example of this comes from the 2008 recession. During this time, American banks engaged in subprime lending activities that were definitely not following spiritual principles. Economist Thomas Friedman described it as a near total breakdown of responsibility at every link in our financial chain. There are, however, different views on this liberal capitalism. Some view it as a way for people who work hard to rise above poverty. Thus it is justified as being a means for people to change their station in life. Another view is of it being as spiritually devoid. As Pope Paul VI has said, "The right to the means of production in free market capitalism is absolute. It has no limits, it has no social obligation." Both people and organizations in a consumerist culture may be characterized by material greed and a lack of spiritual principles. One spiritual leader who has spoken up about this issue is Pope Benedict XVI. He called for people to view their economic activities through a spiritual viewpoint, because only with love illumined by reason and faith is it possible to achieve goals of development endowed with humane and humanizing values. Thus, religious leaders are seeking ways to reconcile materialism with a sense of moral responsibility. Some people have taken steps to reverse this trend. Evidence of this can be found in how books about voluntary simplicity have become bestsellers. These books suggest people cut back on unnecessary material purchases and instead focus on seeking spiritual peace as well as sharing with others. Nevertheless, business and spirituality are not mutually exclusive. A new social consciousness has emerged as companies have realized that making a profit also depends on the company's public image. In other words, a company needs to create goodwill among the public so that consumers respect the company's principles and strategies and are thus more likely to support the company.
The feature of religion in humanity, from the evidence of scientists philosophers, and the report we all hear, see, and read about in the media. The future of humanity is in doubt. Humans become interacted with society's determined difficulties, and they seek some avenue of comfort and belonging. The constant deceit by religious ministers forces mankind to doubt the future of religion because of the negative image, hypocrisy of scandal, and increase of greed. Guns, drugs, and gangs in cities and suburbs will become widespread if the delivery of the spiritual word is not passed on to humanity. Outbreaks of progress and heartache bring humanity together and put peoples, nations, and religions at each other's throat on an extraordinary scale. Humans believe religion's purpose is for them to prosper and be happy. In the in other words, do whatever you want to fulfill your material and emotional desire, call it religion.